Frank Warren is really gloating at this point and reveling in the fact that he's managed to knock Eddie Hearn off his perch. One of them is on the rise during one period of time, and then he falls and the other one rises, etc., etc. That's what we've seen with Frank Warren and Matchroom, not only with Eddie Hearn, but with his dad Barry Hearn as well, because Frank Warren was competing with him back in the days. Warren came out on top. Barry Hearn stepped away from boxing, and Frank Warren was numero uno during that time. Of course, you still had the likes of Frank Maloney and Dave Caldwell and all the small hall promoters, but Frank Warren was number one. Then Eddie Hearn came along, got this exclusive deal with Sky, recognized that Frank Warren's ways were a little antiquated in terms of the way he promoted boxing, in terms of the way he interacted or didn't interact with the public, and to some extent the way that he dealt with fighters. So he came with a new approach, a fresh approach, an approach which was more understanding of the zeitgeist at the time. That's what Eddie Hearn did, and he had a lot of success. But it seems that success got to Eddie Hearn's head. He believed he was invincible. And yeah, it started out apparently being banter when he used to tell Kugan Cassius in their interviews that I'm the best and nobody can touch me. And he's still trying to say that stuff now. And he's basing it on the fact that Matchroom are a global promoter. But I get the sense he doesn't really believe it anymore. He used to believe it, and I think that's what contributed to his downfall. Also, there's the fact that he put so many eggs in the one basket with Anthony Joshua. And as far as Canelo Alvarez, he only ever works with Eddie Hearn on very short-term deals. So, yeah, the rise and fall of promoters. Frank Warren is absolutely loving it at this stage, like that garage song. I think in a previous video I said loving it like DJ Luck and MC Neat, but it's Pied Piper, isn't it? DJ Pied Piper that actually did the song. Loving it, loving it, loving it. Well, loving it like that. Yeah. Shout out to the garage crew. Anyway, Frank Warren is talking about how so many fighters are leaving Matchroom at the moment. He said, all I see is fighters are leaving them at the moment. That's it. And there's a reason for that. They're not getting that exposure. You go to Dazn and you don't get seen. And obviously he's talking about Dazn. Other people have called it Dazn. He didn't make that up, but still, I get it. And with regards to promoters, the rise and fall of, Frank Warren said the following: do you know how many young guys come on the scene and how many of them disappear over the years? This business is about longevity. It's about dealing with the bad times as well as dealing with the good times, because there are bad times. Those are the words of Frank Warren. Now, I've had a lot of less than complimentary things to say about Frank Warren over the years. And I think I was very fair in saying those things. And I still feel a certain way about Frank Warren, the person. I think some of the ways that he conducts business and deals with fighters are, to be honest with you, pretty bad. With that being said, I'm fair. I give a man his due. I also talk about the good things that Frank Warren has, the aspects of his personality that are admirable. And one thing I've always said is this guy is unbelievably determined. I mean, Frank Warren has a fire in his belly that just cannot be extinguished, it would seem. And he made it from the bottom. You know, this ain't like Drake, a manufactured star. No, Frank Warren really did start at the bottom, and now he's here. This guy been shot. This guy's had ups and downs and all kind of legal battles outside the ring. Well, not that he's ever stepped inside the ring, but not only with fighters, but also with promoters, with Don King, who was his business associate for a long time. They had a legal battle back in the days. So the guy's been through it all, and he's still here, and he's probably never been in a stronger position. In fact, he definitely hasn't been in a stronger position in terms of his stable. I don't know what his books are looking like right now. I have to imagine they're pretty healthy since he signed Tyson Fury, and Fury has gotten all this traction and become more popular than he was a few years ago. And of course, he's got Joe Joyce and so on and so forth. But yeah, in terms of his stable of fighters, he's doing very, very well. So yeah, very determined man, more determined than T2, the Terminator. Relentless, just keeps going at you no matter what. No matter what you throw at the guy, whether he has to go bankrupt with one company and come back with it. I mean, he's just relentless. We all remember the down period in Frank Warren's career when he was with Box Nation, when he helped, I think, set up Box Nation or whatnot. They must have been hemorrhaging money. They must have been doing awful. And Frank Warren actually says that Dazn are just copying what Box Nation did. He's saying basically that he pioneered that whole thing with regards to a dedicated boxing channel. Although Dazn isn't really a dedicated boxing channel. Even the UK Dazn, American Dazn and Dazn around the world, they have many different sports. But even the UK Dazn does have a few not sports that you would necessarily want to watch, but it does have sports other than boxing on there, last I checked. But, you know, I get the point Frank Warren is making. Can Eddie Hearn come back? This is a question I've asked before. He, unlike Frank Warren, was raised with a silver spoon in his mouth. And I do think Eddie Hearn is a talented promoter. I think that's undeniable. It's not just because of nepotism and being in the right place at the right time to get this exclusive deal with Sky. No, he's got talent. He's a charismatic guy. He's a good talker. He knows how to engage with the public, or at least he used to, right? So he's got talent. But does he have the kind of drive necessary to come back from a down period? And he is on the decline at this stage. But will this trough turn into another peak for Eddie Hearn? And if so, when's that going to be? You see, so I'm not writing somebody off just because they were raised rich, because some people that are raised rich are just as determined as many of the people who are raised poor. It doesn't just come down to the circumstances, because look, I was raised in a working class environment, and many of the people I was raised with are still doing nothing now. It's not like if you're born working class, it automatically means you're going to have drive and desire. No, most people in general don't have drive and desire. Yeah. But when you're coming from a underprivileged background, it can add extra motivation. And the people who make it from underprivileged backgrounds tend to have insane levels of drive because they have to. You see what I'm saying? Because you won't be able to, the only kind of people who are going to make it from where Frank Warren came from, a very impoverished working class council estate in North London, must have been when, in the 50s when Frank Warren was born, not long after the war. So very impoverished background, very humble beginnings. And to make it from that to being a self-made millionaire, not many people from that environment are going to do it. And the ones who do are going to be cut out of the same kind of cloth, from the same mold as a Frank Warren, somebody that has incredible determination. So yeah, that's old Frankie. Let's see if Eddie Hearn can strike back on the domestic scene in the UK. And I talked about the fact that Frank Warren signed Moses Ituma. For me, that's a real coup for him. And there were some people in the comments saying, to be fair, I was basically asking what Eddie Hearn is doing with regards to trying to recapture his control of the heavyweight division. He doesn't seem to be investing in the next generation of heavyweights, right? Who's he signing? And there was a couple of people in the comments. One of them said that Eddie Hearn does have Fraser Clark and Fabio Wardley. Well, first of all, he doesn't have Fraser Clark. Fraser Clark is with Ben Shalom and Sky. And as far as Fabio Wardley, look, I've got the most amount of admiration for Wardley as a fighter, having achieved what he has so far, becoming British champion with basically no experience at all. He had a handful of white collar fights, and I mean literally a handful. He apparently had less than 5 white collar fights. He's done all his learning in the gym, and it really is like Sparta. It's like ancient Sparta in Dylan White's gym. Fabio Wardley's been in there going life and death with, I guess, Dylan and the other guys that they've had in that camp over the years. And as I say, that's where he's done his tuition. That's where he's done his apprenticeship, should I say. But yeah, he has managed to become British champion when he doesn't have the amateur background, when he doesn't have the pedigree of so many other fighters. So props to him for that. But with regards to Eddie Hearn, Hearn didn't discover Fabio Wardley. Fabio Wardley was managed by Dillian Whyte, still is managed by Dillian Whyte, and Whyte insisted that Wardley fight on his undercards. The same with Alan Babbage, because according to Eddie Hearn, when he works with the likes of Dillian Whyte, the boxer owns the show. So they get to decide, okay, this is the budget. How am I going to spend the budget? According to Hearn, Dillian Whyte decides where the budget goes in terms of what kind of opponents we get in, how much we spend on the undercard, so on and so forth. So Dillian Whyte was deciding to pay his guys, Fabio Wardley and Alan Babbage ostensibly, to get them on the card. You see, it wasn't Eddie Hearn. Not that Eddie Hearn decided against it, or Sky and now Dazn decided against it, because I'm sure they must have had some kind of say, but it was Dillian Whyte who discovered Fabio Wardley. And with the greatest of respect for Fabio Wardley, I don't know how far he can go. I don't want to underestimate someone with that kind of will, as you see with Frank Warren, but he doesn't have the pedigree. And I'm certainly not expecting him to remain undefeated his whole career, unless he retires without ever fighting anywhere close to the top level. So, yeah, Fabio Wardley, to me, to my eyes, doesn't have the potential that someone like a Moses Ituma has. Not even close. He doesn't have the potential, as far as I can see, of a Jared Anderson. I might even go as far as saying he may not have the potential of a David Adeleye. I know some people are going to argue that. There are going to be some people who think that Wardley beats Adeleye now. But I just think Adeleye has a higher ceiling. He didn't have loads of amateur fights himself, David Adeleye, but he certainly had I want to say he had more than 20 amateur fights, and Wardley had none. So that's my take on Fabio Wardley. The only person that Eddie Hearn really has now for the future is Filip Hrgović, and he is not fully an Eddie Hearn fighter. In fact, it seems that Sauerland deal with him more so than Eddie Hearn does in terms of the day-to-day running of Filip Hrgovic's career. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on with Eddie Hearn. Has he fallen out of love with the heavyweight division? Has he still not gotten over the shock of Anthony Joshua getting knocked off? Whatever it is, he better sort it out, and sort it out fast if he wants to bounce back. Or maybe Eddie Hearn, because he grew up rich, privileged, he's not really got the stomach for that kind of fight. And he is unlikely, unless he gets sacked by Dazn, he's unlikely to have to come back from the depths that Frank Warren had to come back from. I was going to say depths of despair. Probably not despair, but, Frank Warren fell on very, very hard times in terms of his business. Eddie Hearn, very unlikely to have to come back from something like that. Anyway, you guys get the gist of this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section below.